right? So this is a thing. Like you have coins like MDA, you have coins like TNT, and you just go to any even just go to something like BRD, right? Like this had, or not BRD, sorry, go to that's not the one that recently moved up. It was Raiden. Raiden was just a matter of right place, right time. Like Raiden had a breakout right there, right? Raiden had a breakout right here. It had probably tried to break out once right here. And let's do this. Let's do Raiden on this side, RDN BTC, right? And let's do BTC USDT on, BTT, BTC USDT on this side. So Raiden here, and we'll put the daily on and just go back to where that trend break is. And maybe we go to like a 4-hour candle or something. We'll just try to see what the 4-hour is showing us here in this moment versus the 4-hour here in Bitcoin. So where are we at here? So Raiden very much looking like it was trying to have a breakout above trend here. So Raiden had started this uptrend like so, right? Raiden has this uptrend like so, and trying to have this breakout above its bigger trend. So then we would go to Bitcoin and see what it's doing, because it's all connected. Like it'll almost be like you're looking at the same chart just on a different exchange, right? So you have this swing to swing right here, and then you kind of go through this move. And you can start to see the collapse of Raiden coin happening right as Bitcoin is losing its trend, right? Because it would have had a local trend like this. It would have had local trend here, and it breaks above it. So it breaks above its trend right here. And let's zoom in and see the connection between the two coins. Raiden coin, right? You just analyze Bitcoin on this side, and we see the move up, right? We see the pullback happen. It hits trend here, so that's good. It kind of confirms that this is holding its move up by holding trend. So fine, then we have the next swing to here, right? Raiden coin starts to stabilize against this swing here. Bitcoin creates its trend that it needs to break. So at 11 o'clock, May 21st here, 7 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1500, right? So here it is, 7 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it breaks up and over, right? So you look at Bitcoin, at 11 o'clock, it was breaking up and over trend, right? So this is a case of right place at the right time. Bitcoin's breaking over trend. So what is Raiden coin going to do? Raiden coin is going to break over its trend if it's testing it, right? Same thing that we just looked at TNT test. And these are 4-hour candles, so I'm sure there's a bunch of tests inside this candle. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, right? 11 o'clock, Raiden coin pushes way over to its next trend. Well, what does Bitcoin do? Bitcoin creates its next trend, right? So to here. So as you go forward in this move, it is trying to push its trend again. It is trying to have its breakout against this larger piece of its move. And this is on 7 a.m. on the 22nd. Well, Bitcoin at 7 a.m. on the 22nd, right here, where it's trying to break over its trend. See, it's trying to break over its trend. However, it has also created this backside failure, right? So this is gone, right? You are now trying at this moment here, and you can see it on the right side of the screen. Maybe it's very faint, but at May 22nd at 7 o'clock, you can see it break over trend, just like here, May 22nd at 7 o'clock. It has this big move over trend. Bitcoin pulls back against trend, so does it. 2 candles later, this is back testing to break trend, right? Bitcoin is doing the same thing. It's back testing to break trend, therefore leaving Raiden coin in a distribution cycle now because it failed its trend attack. Now, this is not to say that Bitcoin can't move up from here, but what this did to Raiden coin was it broke Raiden coin's move, because what Raiden coin tried to uptrend against this larger piece, it broke it. And it actually broke Raiden's move by failing it locally here. So the local failure on Bitcoin, as it was trying to push this trend and break up, so was Raiden coin, right? So this is the connection that all coins have, and where you see you might have something like MDA attacking at the same time, but just a slight difference in 4 hours or 2 hours or 6 hours, a slight difference, where if it had happened 2 hours earlier, MDA was the coin that moved up how much percentage, and TNT actually moved down again for another few days. But this actually, as prepped as Raiden coin was ready to break out, like you look at this move and say, okay, how much did this actually make? It actually looks like quite a bit here. It actually looks like about 30%. Yeah, this trying to make 32%, turning into a much bigger move. Actually, Bitcoin broke its move. So you could see the breakout that Raiden was trying to have here against the trend. And so be it just sequence of timing, it broke its move. And this is so common. This happens all the time. So anyways, you fast forward into this moment down here of breakout on May 29th at 3 a.m. and what's happening, right? And TradingView's acting a little funny here, putting up profit charts everywhere. It knows we're talking about Raiden, so it's trying to scream profit at us. So the same thing that happens here, right? As you break over trend, Raiden does the same thing. You see it happens right here. You have a trend break on Bitcoin, and Raiden coin is in the right moment, in the right time. So it is now testing this trend again, but it is ready to try to test a break on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin does break its trend. And look what happens to Raiden after it breaks its trend. It sets Raiden on its uptrend. So this is sequencing, and what sequencing looks like on a better time scale as towards something like MDA, because I've been watching MDA and I've been cross analyzing it on Bitcoin. It was just stuck in the wrong moment at the wrong time. Actually, let's step this back and go like this. Had these moves happened 3 hours forward, 3 hours behind, MDA could have been the coin that's testing its trend. You see right here where it's breaking trend right here on Bitcoin. It breaks its trend right there at 7 a.m. Well, look what's happening on MDA. It's taking that same move. But the question has to now become, what trend are you breaking, right? What trend are you breaking, MDA? And let's pull this trend out to here, right? We would have had that there. And so it's breaking its trend, right? It's doing very much the same thing as Bitcoin is doing. But what's the significance of this trend that it's breaking, right? Does it have valleys that it has to back test, or is it already in an uptrend, right? Is it already in distribution? Does it have valleys? Is it being stopped out of the move by another factor, right? So the first thing I would do now is I would look at this on MDA, and I would look at this trend here and see that it was trying to break above this trend and maybe test this larger piece right here. And then I would even go back further and I would say, okay, what happened in the past? Because maybe our trend isn't accurate here. Kind of looks like our trend is a bit outdated. Let's take a look at MDA's trend and see what it was doing. So in this moment here, fine, it has this tool. It's been kind of funny. It has this right back here, swings to there, which is fine. This swings to there, which is showing you this break point there, which will also show you the local part of the move, which is here to here, right? A little more frayed out. So you have that right there, swing to swing, right? Which will then make this global here, which hasn't broken out of that global yet due to the local parameters on this move. So actually, this wasn't ready to break out yet on MDA when this happened. And not only because the trends aren't testing anything of major relevance, right? You're not coming up to a trend that's set out here and you're in this moment right here about to test out of this trend when Bitcoin moves up in its move. No, you actually have a trend that's kind of undefined in this moment. So there's no real reason for capital injection to come into this, because all you're simply doing is just breaking this trend, and you still have levels to backtest, right? Like you have untested valley right here, right? You have this level back here, which is a inverse that was hit to come to this level right here. So more importantly, breaking this inverse at 13.7 is the bigger moment for Bitcoin, or even this level right here, which would have been a fractal, looks like on the 12-hour, a fractal origin level. So you have larger levels here that need to be broken that aren't really being tested yet. So even if MDA was to break out, like what is it breaking out to? Is it breaking out to this level here at 13,000? Is it just back testing out of this distribution piece that it had right here? Which is what it's doing, right? Like it has a huge rundown here. It breaks trend. And so fine, it completes its target. And that's all that the move was supposed to do. It was just supposed to complete this target right here, just this valley. It doesn't have a bigger target in mind. And so when Bitcoin breaks up, you're seeing the sequencing and it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It back targets its level. The first thing in defining what you need to look at in a market stance, in a marketscape, is what is the general health of everything. So the first part of this becomes understanding that sequencing is a very fickle game. So sequencing means that you have to understand that there are coins that are all going to be breaking out in the correct in sequence. So maybe 2 or 3 coins are breaking out in the same day, but one has a bigger ceiling to it, right? It has more tested levels. It has a bigger part of the move. It has a big weekly gap in it. It's breaking something that has been there, a trend line that's been there for, I don't know, 6 months or a year, or something more than 1 month. versus something that's only breaking a trend that's only been there for 2 months, maybe. So maybe out of the two coins, they're breaking out at the same time. One is testing a larger trend. The one that's testing a larger trend is going to have more capital injection, right? There's just more interest in the coin. There's more value to see it going up. And maybe it has a larger gap in the books to where if you look at something like this, you look at a weekly, weekly is a bad assessment because everything is going to have this huge weekly gap, right? But maybe you look at the daily gap. There's a lot in here that happened. Well, what did Raiden look like? Let's take a look. Or even TNT for that matter, any one of these coins. Like what does Raiden look like? Like this has a lot of tested levels in here, right? Like you have this test of this inverse right here. So that's tested. So the valley can come up and be tested. This is the untested valley right here. You have an origin level right here. This is very clear and easy to see, an origin level right there. So you're testing an origin breakout as to where something like MDA, it has been testing an origin breakout as well right here, but it's not breaking the right trend as to where MDA was breaking the right trend in that, or sorry, as to where Raiden was breaking the right trend, or even TNT for that example. You look at TNT and why it moved, you can see very much the same thing. Origin test right there, a large gap to this level here, right? There's an origin test here. There's a large gap to here. So when you do break whatever local level you have defined right here, you're going to come back up and test this origin level, which is going to test this right here. So actually on that day, that's exactly what you do. You hit target there, which would have been valley here in the case of a move up. So you do close the valley, you have a pullback, you hold whatever level is in here fractally, and then you move up to a larger target. And you look at the weekly, and I'm sure the gap on TNT on the weekly is there too, right? So, and then TNT back targets an untested weekly. So TNT was set up sequence wise for a better piece of the move as opposed to something like MDA. So that is the first thing to know about assessing the market. The next thing to know about assessing the market is this. We're going to go back to Bitcoin now. We're going to go back to Bitcoin and we're going to start to look at the overall health of the move. And we're going to kind of delete these trend lines and, maybe like this guy here and this guy here, just some of this other stuff that we don't really need. That's fine. This looks like a relatively safe chart to use, just like this. It's nothing major. It's just this one should be here. That's fine. We just close that. It doesn't matter. We'll just actually put up the next valley that it targeted. Guess it hit the inverse right here. So it actually hit an inverse level right here at where are we on the daily? So let's do this. Let's make this red. This is a daily inverse that it hit. What did it do on the weekly? Pretty much hit this to the T, didn't it? Let's snap it properly here. Pretty much hit that to the T and never really back attacks that close of that level actually. So we look at this and even on the weekly, it pretty much stopped at the inverse as well. It was stopping on the daily inverse, but needs to really attack this weekly valley again to have another part of its move up, right? Really needs to close this weekly level, or at least attack this weekly level to continue its move up to the next weekly, which will be here. And then assumingly there will be another daily inverse somewhere inside of here that'll stop at first to see if it can continue that move up. So something like that would be relatively safe to say that if we're looking at Bitcoin and what it could do, there will be an inverse right here. You can tell just by the way the candles are on a 12-hour inverse right there. Weekly, daily inverse, possibly another daily inverse short right here. So daily inverse, we're just going to assumingly mark this as a 12. I guess we could just verify that we're not in the replayer tool. So let's just go take a look. And so it's actually right there on that same level, or same price, just a little bit forward. So you can kind of assumingly have these candles marked out like this on Bitcoin, and so fine. So part of understanding the general health of this market is this, right? Like we have seen now, we've looked at TNT, we've looked at MDA, we've looked at Raiden coin, and we know everything has been, how long of distribution everything has gone on. So we start to break down our expectations in this move, and everything had been on this 2-month-long distribution cycle. But that's caused by Bitcoin's move up. Like everybody knows that Bitcoin's moving up. People want to be in Bitcoin. Bitcoin dominance is higher. There's not a lot of leverage going into altcoins right now. So this is where we have to start to analyze the market and start to say, okay, well, what can we expect in the future? Where can we analyze this? What is, now that we know coins are going to be sequencing, how do we start to say like, okay, well, when should we be taking these trades? So the first thing to understand is that Bitcoin is in recovery. So the first thing that Bitcoin had done is it had closed its weekly valley. It's very first one, which is right here. And actually, I should probably color code that to the weekly. So So now what I'd like to do is I would like to go and just start to look at QLC for this example. Sure, why not QLC? I want to use QKC, but I also don't want to erase my chart. So we'll just use QLC. I don't think I have a chart for QLC. We go back here and we assume that Bitcoin has completed its weekly test of its value. So then the first thing we do is we start to say, okay, well what is every coin going to do? If Bitcoin has back tested its weekly level, then so will all other coins. Like all these other coins are going to start back testing weekly levels as well, right? So then we start to find the weekly levels in these coins, which is right here. That's the weekly level right there. You see the two candles there. Bitcoin has its attack right here of that weekly level, which is reflected in QKC. So you're looking relatively at the same exact thing on this chart. So you're looking at relatively the exact same thing. The difference between this cycle here and this cycle here is the dominance of Bitcoin, right? So in a market where Bitcoin has back attacked its weekly level, and it is for how long wedging against that weekly level, we very much see the same thing is going to happen on QLC, right? It does the exact same thing. It wedges against that weekly level over and over and over until it comes to this moment right here where it breaks over, right? And it has this big move up, right? So it over leverages itself into a big move up. So I want you to look at the left side of the screen. This is March 25th, 19. So March 25th, 19 is this candle right here before Bitcoin breaks over its weekly. So this is kind of that knee-jerk reaction that is going to happen in our markets, parabolic to Bitcoin. So we already know that Bitcoin closed its weekly level here. So QLC can do the same thing. So if you were down here and you saw Bitcoin had taken that big move up, this is December 17th on this side. So December 17th on this side is this candle here. You could have gotten into this trade in the pullback and just assumed that it would attack its weekly level too in respect to what Bitcoin did, which it had done. So just right there, we already ascertain a good piece of information about the health of our markets is that, okay, Bitcoin back attacked its weekly. So is everything else going to back attack its weekly. So QLC has a grotesque over movement against it, right? As this is wedging, half of the coins had this grotesque over movement and half of them had this big purger down, right? So what does QLC attack here? QLC attacks probably some daily level, and not relevant what QLC attacks, but for the future, it's going to be important, right? So QLC attacks probably, I would say probably an inverse level at this point. I'm going to assume it's right here. Probably didn't touch the weekly. No, it didn't touch the daily break level. It's something I was expecting, right? Not to hit a break level, but more so to hit a hold level. And then its hold level on that would have been right there. So this hold level right here. So it actually hits its hold level to the T. So this would have been indicative to showing you what is about to happen, right? It is about to take a move down. It's not like this thing hit a break level and had a pullback. It hit an inverse level and had a pullback, right? It hit a hold level and had a pullback. So when Bitcoin moves up after this coin has hit an inverse level, we already know it's prepped to move down, right? So this was kind of one signal on QLC, and I'm assuming that every coin did the very same move. Like no matter what chart you look at that had this kind of move up like that, like just look at Vibe, for example. I think Vibe had a relatively similar move. Just kind of remove the drawings on Vibe. As to where Vibe had a large move up against its level. I'm assuming it hit an inverse too somewhere, or is it Vibe? Or I think it's Vib. I'm thinking about not Vibe, Vib. I'm assuming Vibe did very much the same thing because it had a very similar move, right? It had a very similar move as to where it didn't close a valley. And you would look at this here, and possibly this is now a 12-hour in here, right there, right? So this is the inverse level right here. That was already hit one time on the 12-hour. Where's my 12-hour color? Right there. And then this would have been the valley that it needed to close in order to keep moving up, right? So it does the exact same thing. It hits that same level. It actually falls short of it. More importantly, not being that it doesn't hit the exact same level, but more importantly, the piece of information that's actually crucial here is whether it can close the valley or not. Because if it doesn't close the valley, it's failing, right? So it's a simple fact that these coins all relatively did this exact same move in this moment. So if you look at the left side of your screen and the right side, you'll notice this reaches up towards an inverse as well. So this is relatively the same exact move is happening across all coins. So you guys are starting to see a pattern here as to what happens in our markets, right? So then we're going to go back to Vibe, but what was before Vibe? It was QLC, right? We're looking at QLC. So, right, anyways, QLC hits its inverse moment. And so fine, all the capital goes back into Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes on this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-week soar up to its inverse level up here. So what can we ascertain off this? That we back closed 1 weekly, 2 weeklies, and hit a inverse of the next weekly. So we can ascertain that most coins having this reaction to their weekly are going to now start to close their weekly valleys. So now coins are going to start back attacking a weekly level at some point. And TNT was the first coin that actually did it from what I can see. We clearly don't have one here on QLC. We have a level up here, right? We have a 2600 level here, and then we have an inverse here at 1600. So we would start to break this thing down into lower time frames. And we already know that that's the inverse that's attacked. So fine. This is the inverse right here. So we know that 1 weekly is closed, 2 weeklies are closed. So we can already say that we're probably going to back test 2 more valleys, right? We're probably going to back test this level in QLC, and it will take time, but we will get there. I don't think we're going to quite come up to there, which will be an inverse test of this, which is kind of is what to be expected, right? The inverse test on the larger scale, right? Which is exactly this moment right here. So this is probably going to be the level that's attacked on QLC, the 1600 level, right? From where we are now. And you go to something like TNT, and let's see what level TNT attacked recently. You go to TNT, lo and behold, TNT. Let's actually just remove our chart and find the level on the weekly that TNT attacked. Lo and behold, TNT. Here's the inverse right here. So that's fine. This is the level right there. And then here's the inverse here. So what's on the lower time frame? Because we can't see it here. You have the inverse here, and then you have the valley right there, which is actually an origin level right here. So did it attack the origin? Nope. This auto mode is killer. So it attacks the inverse here, possibly. I'd actually like to see this driven down on a lower time frame to see where the valley is here. So you have this here, you have that there. So this is the origin level right here. So this is the breakout moment for the future. So we're going to mark this as something important because this is the breakout moment for the future here. This is a 12-hour origin level. This is a very important level. So it inversed the origin. That's what it did. Get the inverse on that origin, which could be right there on the daily. If we look at where that hit, it actually didn't even reach that. Wow. Wonder if there is a 4-hour that I'm missing, possibly. So you have this here is the 4-hour of that origin level, but that doesn't seem right. Where's the 12-hour here? Is there a 12-hour valley in here, or is it actually the 4-hour? There's no 12-hour valley in here. Okay, so it's the 4-hour. So it actually hit the inverse 4-hour, which is fine. But that is showing you what is happening against Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoin taking its bigger move up against its level. And in this moment here, let's move this to the daily. In this moment here, having all the right pieces, I guess we have to zoom in on this side too. Having all the right pieces in play and dissecting that breakout moment there, Bitcoin breaking its trend when it did here, when we had broken that down inside of here. Simply the fact that TNT is in the right place at the right time. So now we go to something that hasn't, because this isn't really relevant information other than to say, okay, the relevant piece here, actually this is very relevant information because this is kind of what we needed to see in the market. We needed to see one coin kind of have this overreaction, right? Whether it had been Bitcoin Diamond or whether it had been, it's a good one to look at because we already did it again. Whether it be Bitcoin Diamond or whether it be whatever coin it is, right? We've seen Dent test an inverse weekly. We've seen TNT test an inverse level, right? what this tests here on the daily. So this is the information that we have to use to assess the health of the market, right? So quite simply, and yeah, fine, okay, we'll drill down and find the exact value. That's not a problem, right? So we test the inverse level again. So this is the information we need to start making the decisions about what coins are going to do in the future and where their possible points of breakout are, right? Because we've seen the effect that Bitcoin is going to have on the market. If no coins had been moving up, we would see that nothing is ready, right? When coins start recovering, they are going to recover in sequence. So you're going to have something like TNT happen first, then maybe Oaks, then maybe Bitcoin Diamond, then maybe this coin and that coin, and it will become a test of what trend is Bitcoin breaking in that moment versus what coins are ready to or have the maturity in the move to have their breakout. And Bitcoin Diamonds just so happened to be, for whatever reason, it was breaking out here as we dissected earlier. It was just ready to back attack its level because it was sequenced to be the right move. So now we know that something like TNT, Bitcoin Diamond, Dent did very much the same thing. And actually, Dent was one of the first risers. Dent had actually already back tested its weekly inverse level. So actually, to be fair and honest with you guys, Dent was actually one of the first coins I noticed this on. So if you actually just get rid of everything on this chart and you see the weekly downtrend here, right? You see the weekly downtrend and the weekly inverse. The weekly inverse was here. This had already tested. So now this is pushing up to its weekly level. So actually Dent was the first coin I had noticed this happen on, right? And then you had things, and then I think it was Skycoin that had moved next, and then XVG, and now TNT. But TNT being one of the first real recovery coins, because TNT actually has closed outside of a large part of the move. But these are very important pieces of information because they're telling us the health of the market, right? We are now, more importantly, not stopping at this inverse weekly level right here. I guess it would be right here, sorry. This inverse weekly level, or actually right here. Yeah, which is, I had it marked right at first, because this would be an inverse daily then. So let's mark this. And put the weekly here. So now we actually know that we are starting to set breakouts above the current weekly right now. So whenever we are sequenced properly, we are going to start to see coins doing this, having this bigger overreaction. Now, possibly TNT and Skycoin and XUG and some of these other coins that move pretty quick are going to have a bit of an overreaction. But at a minimum case in point, we can say, okay, we have a weekly level. Oops, this should be solid. We have a weekly trend back tested, and it has gone up and stopped at an inverse level. So we know that the health of the market is telling us that we can now start to recover some of these coins. So we look at something like QKC that hasn't moved yet, right? We look at QKC, and I've been shilling QKC for quite a few days now. And you start to look at something like QKC, which is trying to sequence into a breakout, right? Like QKC is desperately trying to sequence into a breakout. So we first start by marking out some pretty important levels, right? Like untested inverse level here on this larger, possibly what looks like could be a monthly here, or even all the way up here. But really with the end goal of QKC, upon the right sequencing, given the right events, we'll back test this level at a minimum, because in a recovery market, QKC does need to get back to some of its upper range here, right? Like it does need to get to this upper range, and this being origin level right here, breakout to its all-time high. So it breaks above this level, it reaches its all-time high, which is most likely going to happen upon the break of this green trend. So wherever that happens, this is a piece of information that we can ascertain about our markets. We have this bigger trend here. And typically when you break a larger trend, you will test its inverse. So we will test something like this. Well, on this trend break, that's kind of a common thing for trend. Whatever trend you break, you're typically going to back test its larger inverse level. So this inverse level off of this, even though it's in front of it, using this one is the same level as this right here, which coincidentally is our inverse level. So we will see maybe a couple tests here up to 589, a pullback to 570, and then some local valley closes in the meantime, right? Like, so this is actually you test this inverse and you're closing this valley right here, which will move up, and then you're actually testing the real inverse, which is right here. So this inverse actually is kind of devoid by the fact that it will have automatic succession, because it's not testing an inverse globally, it's actually testing a local break level. So breaking this part of the move to go up to this inverse, which therefore then if you go back to the weekly, you can see where your inverse is coming from on the weekly, the first weekly and then the second weekly here. But again, this will lead us to the 762 level. So now you can start to see where upon the right sequencing of events, QKC actually has a pretty well preset move already. Actually, it's breaking this valley right here. So if we go to the weekly, back again to this weekly valley, it's breaking this trend right here, which these are the inverse levels of that trend right here and right here. And then you would say, okay, well, what's the monthly inverse? Which is, this is actually a monthly inverse level.